Hello and welcome back to another slightly different episode of the Everyday Joy podcast. I'm your host, Ash Couchman now, and I cannot wait to find moments of joy with you today. This is another episode. It's punchy, it's a little bit longer than our normal 10-minute episodes, but we're going to continue to chat all things marriage, super casual, as I hang out with Steve and Zoe Mark, some beautiful friends of mine. I cannot wait to dive into today's episode. So I have two of my most favorite people ever on the podcast with me. This week we have Steve and Zoe Marks.
Yeah. Ooh, hello.
Zoe was on the podcast a few weeks ago. You would have got to know her. But Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I wanted to have you guys on. One, because you guys have become both mine and Toby's great friends and mentors, and basically you're just like family to us. But I think, you know, going through this season of life, it's made me personally realize how deeply I've needed people to walk alongside and to have people that you're comfortable enough around to be honest with and vulnerable with. And, you know, I think just the way you guys have talked about marriage to Tobes and I has been so integral in like, one, being excited about marriage, because you guys have always been like, marriage is the best.
Yes.
But there are also moments where it's tricky and you have to work through things. And you guys have given us such a beautiful picture of what a healthy marriage could look like. So thank you, first of all, for that, because you guys bless us. And we just love you so much. Literally last episode where Zoe and I hung out, I think within 30 seconds of talking about how much I love Zoe, I just started to cry.
And then I followed suit, so it was good.
No tears today. But you guys, we were just discussing, what's the final date of you guys being together? What did you say? How many years of marriage?
I think we worked it out to be 12. Is that
12
right?
years.
12 years married.
Now, I just heard them debate when this began. My question is, once you're married, do you count, like, is it if someone said, how long have you been together, would you say 12 years or would you say 14 years? Like, because I think you guys dated for a few years before that.
Yeah, no, I'd say we've been together 14 years.
You'd say that?
Yeah. What would you say?
Yeah, I like the date we got married and the celebration on that date. But yeah, I'm happy with
Either
whatever.
one.
Yeah.
Whatever you're feeling in the moment.
This is the first tip in marriage. Always go along with what the other one says.
Yeah.
Keep it happy.
Yeah. So good.
no.
I know, I just keep thinking, I'm like, at what point do you stop going, we've been together, we started dating on this day.
But I start asking you, how long have you been married? I think it changes.
Yeah, the
longer you've been
language.
married,
That's
the language
true.
probably changes.
That's true. That's probably where it all kind of happens. Not
Yeah.
so much the actual like amount of time, but the fact that once you're married, people just ask you from that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, guys, tell us a little bit about your story. How did you meet? So you've been together for 14 years. Give us a little bit, like a snippet of how you guys met and getting married and all those things.
Well, yes, it was 14 years ago, and we met at the church that we were attending. It was a small group, I think.
It was a small group dinner.
Small group dinner.
Love a good small group dinner for
Yes,
marriage.
absolutely.
What's the word?
Yeah. 100%. Groups are so important.
Yeah.
But we went, I went along and saw Zoe walk in with someone else who I thought, oh, well, maybe she's with that guy. And we kind of got chatting.
It's never straightforward, is it?
No.
Straightforward.
But we got chatting and, we just found out quite a bit in common. We just had so much to talk about and connect on. And, yeah, that was the first kind of meeting. And we then, I think we went along to that.
We went to the road to Bethlehem.
The road to Bethlehem. That's right. And we, hung out that night. And then, just kind of Zoe, I think, made the commitment that she wouldn't find me on social media until after.
My friends told me I wasn't allowed to add him on social media until after New Year's. This was before Christmas when I met Steve. And we weren't allowed to add him until after New Year's because, we didn't want to look desperate. We didn't want to make him, chase a little bit. So I was a bit, we had a bit of fun. And we grew a great friendship in that time, actually, because we actually just relied on face-to-face and catching up and hanging out and getting to know one another. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of what I love about our marriage is we developed a really great friendship in that time before we were ever even dating,
Yeah,
which was really cool.
that's awesome. So good. So you started dating, and then how long did you date for?
A year.
A year.
Yeah.
A year before we got engaged,
Yeah.
and then a year before we got married after that.
Perfect. I'm glad you know the timeline and the dates. We got married in October, I think, and that was a celebration in Melbourne with all our family and friends here, which was so special. And then we decided to have a ceremony or a blessing service over in Zimbabwe, which is where I'm from, and it was an absolute honour and to be able to take Zoe over there and to introduce her to my family who weren't able to come out, and particularly my grandparents who were in Zimbabwe, and so we had that blessing ceremony there and a second honeymoon, I guess, which was absolutely incredible.
So cool. I feel like when you've talked about, particularly like when I've spoken to Zoe, you just talk about your wedding day with just like, you're like, it's still the best day. Like when you reflect
100%.
on it, you're like, it is still the best day. And even just before when we were like, Steve, like, you know, what day do you go from? You're like, the wedding, because it was so good. So it's like, do you just still look back on that day with like the best fond memories?
You're hanging out with your best mates and your family, and you're celebrating the beginning of a new life together, and it's exciting. And you know, that day was just full of really great memories. And to be able to do it twice for us was super special because we felt like nobody missed out. Even though we're from completely different parts of the world and our families are from different parts of the world, we were able to be together across the two ceremonies. And that was really cool. And I got to ride in on an elephant in my second ceremony.
That is so cool.
It was in a game reserve. It was amazing. What? Yeah, it was so cool.
That is like... These Pinterest weddings have got nothing on that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
So you've been married for 12 years and you've been doing life together. You now have kids.
Yes.
Two beautiful little gals. Now, when you look back on the last 12 years, what do you think has been your favorite part about marriage so far?
There is so much. And I think for me, it's definitely... You know, we aren't created to be alone. We're designed to live in, you know, communities and with other people around us. And I think the best thing, you know, going from into marriage was that I was able to do life with my best friend and to have Zoe next to me, you know, beside me, always, you know, wanting to encourage me, talk through ideas, talk through, you know, challenges and struggles that we have and the tough times, but you know, enjoy the highs and the holidays and just the fun that we had. So just being with my best friend through it all has been the best.
So cool. How about you, Zoe?
You stole my
You can repeat it, that's fine.
Yeah, I think the best bit about marriage is starting your own life. It's a whole new chapter, and you get to create that story together. And I've loved, you know, we've had 12 years of unfolding our story and you know, many, many more to come. But I love the journey that we've been on and the way I'm watching God unfold our story together as our family. You become your own family, and it's so amazing to see how God unfolds that story. So that's, I think my favorite part is just watching the chapters unfold over the last 12 years and getting to do that together and be our own little family unit is really cool.
Oh, so cool. Now, when you look back to when you first got married, is there something that you didn't expect? Did you have a picture of marriage and was it different to what it looked like? Or what did you think when you first got married?
I think there's always the excitement about married. You know, you're moving in together and you move, you rent, or you buy a new house, and you know, you get to start putting things together the way you dream they would be or the way you want them to be. But then alongside that, I think, comes the reality of living with another human being that you've never lived with before. Yeah. And the reality of that can be really challenging. You have to have a lot of grace And there is absolutely the honeymoon period, and everybody talks about that. And it is beautiful. And there is definitely a honeymoon period where that stuff doesn't really bother you all that much.
Yeah.
But the more time goes on and the more you realize, oh, this is forever. Like, I'm going to have to learn to find a way to deal with the fact that he doesn't put his socks in the laundry basket or whatever it might be. There are lots of little things I think that are new and you can be overwhelming sometimes. And so I don't think I was prepared for how overwhelming that was going to feel and not having, you know, a space that was mine. Now it's our space. And so you both want to have a place and a belonging in that space, but it's finding a way to do that where you respect each other and it's done well. And that can be really challenging.
Yeah, totally. I think something that I've even realized coming into this season of life is like everything's new. And no one really talks about it until you get to that point, if that makes sense. Like no one's really out here going like, I don't know, but I think because there's so much excitement around it, that's often, and the wedding and the event is the main focus of conversation. But I think something that we've really kind of connected on, Zoe, is the fact that I was like, Zoe, I'm freaking out. like I'm so excited, but it's also new and change and different. And it's so many things happening at the same time. And when you were kind of going through that, is there something that helped you deal with all the newness of that season?
I think remembering that grace is super important, that you're two individual people learning to navigate this together and you're both learning. So having grace for each other in that season, I think is so important. And just, I distinctly remember in the early days of our marriage, I remember God, that real sense of God tapping me on the shoulder going, hey, this is as hard for him as it is for you. So how about you just take a breath and just actually talk about it. Go, hey, I'm finding this really hard. Are you finding this really hard? You know, and to have grace in those situations. And it's not just about one person. You're both navigating that.
Yeah. That's such a great thought. Because I know it can be easy to become quite insular. Like you kind of just go, oh, well, this is how I feel. But actually learning how to go, okay, well, you know, the way the Lord often does, prompts us to be like, maybe we should consider the other person in this equation. How about you, Steve? Was there anything for you?
I think for me, something that I didn't expect was we've obviously lived quite independently. You know, we were young adults, and so we had independent lives. And coming together as a couple and a married couple, I didn't understand the importance of communication and particularly around, you know, if I'm, you know, wanting to catch up with someone, the boys might be catching up on a Saturday night or something, and, you know, I initially would come to Zoe and go, oh, the guys are catching up on Saturday night, I'm going out, I hope that's okay. And I learnt that, you know, just changing the way I kind of asked was important. I learnt that, well, it's not just my life that I'm living, it's, you know, I'm married and got to take into consideration Zoe, and, you know, and so just changing the way that I do that and go about that. And it's kind of changed to being, well, Zoe, the guys are catching up on Saturday night. What are our plans? What are we looking at doing? Is there, you know, how's that going to affect us? And rather than going and saying, Zoe, this is what I'm doing, it's, hey, what are we doing?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's so true. I think that you kind of just imagine that you just know the skills of combining your lives together before you get married. You're like, oh yeah, that's just how it happens. You know, that's just what happens. But like you said, it's actually kind of I guess it is a skill to learn to go, okay, well, how am I going to change how I think? How am I going to do all these things to now consider another person? Because I guess even when you're dating, and like Tobes and I have even found this now, like your lives are still separate enough that like, if you need to go do something, it's fine. It doesn't really impact you. And so it's crazy how literally over one weekend you go from just being like, whatevs, to, oh, like now it actually deeply affects this relationship. So I think that's a great thought. And I probably will write that down on my list of things to make sure I do, not just piece it out. Now, in the early years of marriage, was there something in the early years of marriage that was harder than you expected?
Yeah, I think the thing that was hardest for me was maybe I just didn't give enough thought before we got married. But the idea that you are two human beings who've learned to do everyday routine things in two very different households growing up. And so the way that you do things is very different.
Very true.
And I found that so challenging because I am really particular about the way I hang the washing. And he's really particular about the way he stacks a dishwasher. But we've been raised to do that super differently. So then all of a sudden, it's our job as a married couple. And I'm like, I would go outside and be like, okay, this is the grace. I've got to just be grateful he hung the washing. But internally, I was having this battle with like, now it's going to like have peg marks all over my shirts and like grease all the washing I just washed. And, you know, but they were seemingly little things, but they can become really big if you allow them to. And so I really battled with that in the beginning of our marriage. I was like, I need to learn that we need to talk about this stuff. Yeah. Hey, I really love that you know, like it was so helpful that you hung out the washing for me this morning. Next time, would you mind just pegging my shirts from the bottom rather than the shoulders? You know, like, it's as simple as that, but I found that really challenging in the beginning. And a great mentor that I had in that time actually said to me, the best thing you can do here is actually say to your husband, I love that you did that. I love that we're doing this together. I love that I don't have to ask you to hang the washing, but hey, can we meet a middle ground here where it works? And it's exactly stacking the dishwasher. So, you know, but they were what seemed quite small became quite big, and I wasn't prepared for that. I felt really overwhelmed by that and was like, wait, how do we navigate this? Yeah. You know, without disrespecting each other, without sounding ungrateful or without having an argument about it. Yeah. So, yeah,
and almost having to learn to come with an attitude of like, I want to figure this out together. Like, it's not...
It's how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
It's not about how you do it or I do it, but how it's us. So how are we going to do this?
Yeah, that's so true. Because even like now, that makes me giggle. Like Toby has the most particular ways that he like folds his socks. Yeah. He folds his socks, everyone.
Wow.
So like...
Hey, we fold socks too.
Sorry, guys. He's got such a particular way that he does it, and I was even, you know, before we've been married, like, you know, helping him out every now and again. It was like I would always just be like, yeah, but like I'm doing your washing, like chill out, bro, chill out. Yeah. But it's so true because it's kind of like you want to have this like nice. I don't even know what the word is for it. Like you want to be able to have enough open communication where you go, those little things, although might seem trivial at the beginning, if you have 10 years of marriage where you can't communicate those things, when you reflect on your 12 years of marriage, what is something that you would have told freshly married Steve and Zoe? Like if you could be like, guys, this is going to be your life, what would you encourage them about?
I think it would be, you know, it's often spoken about that honeymoon, you know, phase, and that can last, you know, I don't know, 6, 8, 12 weeks, but all the way to 6, 12 months and 18 months. But, you know, the longer we kind of got into our marriage, I began to realize that, you know, I had to choose to love Zoe. At times it's really hard and challenging, but it's a choice. And, I just needed to, through those battles, through the challenges, you need to choose to love.
Yeah. I think that absolutely love is a choice, and choosing to love can be hard. And I think we've walked through seasons where, you know, I mean, we've lived through COVID, like love when you're living in each other's pockets 24/7 and trying to do your jobs and raise kids. It's not easy. Yeah. So yeah, choosing to love is hard. But I think the other thing that I would have told 12 years ago, Steve and Zoe, is probably that marriage is valleys and it is mountaintops, and that is the way God designed life to be. He is going to bless you on the mountaintops and he's going to walk with you to the valleys, and that is okay. And not to have some false expectation that our life is going to be awesome all the time, and that's okay, that God's going to continue to walk through us, through those valleys and through those mountaintops with us. And you know, we'll look back and that will all create part of our story, and that's a really cool thing to look back on, and not to be afraid of that. Yeah. You know, to be okay with that. Be at peace that God isn't going to abandon your marriage. Like no matter whether it's up or down, he will walk through that with you. And that's really cool to look back on over 12 years. Yeah.
That's so cool. Because when you're kind of seeing that, then, you know, talking about, you know, they've got to walk you through, whether it's the mountaintops or the valleys. Is there something that you guys have done, or what have you guys chosen to do to keep God at the center of your marriage?
I think that's probably magnified in the years since we've had children. I think in the early days when it's just two of you, keeping God at the center it's pretty chill. You can do it fairly well. Like, we'd turn up at church and we'd serve together, and we'd do what God had called us to do, and we encourage each other on with that. But I think the more time goes on and the more you fill your life with, and the more your life grows together, the more you have to be purposeful about it. And I think that that's the real key for us is being intentional.
Yeah.
And if you choose not to be intentional, it's really easy to let God slip out of it. It's really easy to become exactly what we were saying before, that, self-centered mindset kicks in, and it's easy to let God slip out of your marriage if you choose to do that. If you don't choose to be intentional about praying together, about making sure you make Sunday church a commitment together, about making sure we prioritize for us running our Connect group and being good leaders together and growing and reading God's word together. And if you don't be intentional about that, I think, there's opportunity to fall away from God. And so that being intentional really has been the big thing in our journey.
Yeah. Anything to add, Steve?
Yeah, no, definitely, what Zoe's shared as well. But just, I think the big thing for me has been just witnessing, parents, grandparents, other mentors who in our lives who've really encouraged us to pray together and to read God's word together. And so, as a couple, we've come together and made that a priority each day, as often as we can. That we're not perfect, but we do what we can to make sure that God is always at the center.
And cheering each other on in your own relationship with God. So, let's be real here. Steve is an early bird, and he gets up early to read his word and to spend time with God. And I have to choose to be joyful in that, because that alarm goes off and I'm not joyful at that. I'm not going to lie. But, choosing to say, if that's what works for you to keep your relationship with God alive, I honour that and I make space.
Yeah.
And I will be okay with that. I will give you the space to do God with the way you need to do that so if you're not strong in your own relationship with Jesus, it's going to be really hard to do that in your marriage.
Yeah.
And so
that's such a great thought.
Leave space for that too.
Yeah. It's so cool that you said that, because if you're out here being like, no, just sleep in today, it's not actually honoring God in your marriage if that's how Steve is I
know that his day is better and he feels like he can do his best for God when he has that time with him in the morning. And just because I operate differently doesn't mean that I shouldn't honor that and make space for that and make sure I encourage him in that. So
good.
Yeah.
So good. I love chatting to you guys. It's been so good to have you on. You're actually going to be on the podcast again next week. We're going to do a little touch on how marriage kind of changed once you had kids and what that looks like, how things are different. But we'll jump into that very soon. I love chatting to Steve and Zoe. It's so cool to have people who are ahead of the journey, further along than you are, people to encourage you in your walk, in your relationship, in your finding out how to balance relationship, marriage, faith, all of the above. I know that we're just at the beginning, and like I said in last week's episode, if you have advice, if there's anything that you have learned, thought of, experienced, would you head over to the Everyday Joy Facebook community group? That way you can chat about it, you can add your thoughts, and you can share the encouragements that you've learnt over your relationship and your life. I cannot wait to continue to chat with you next week. We have another very special single episode with Steve and Zoe. Until then, I pray you're able to find moments of joy.